Hi, good evening, everyone. They may have your attention. Thank you. And today is Monday, May 12th. You're gathered here to vote on our annual budget. With 75 members present, it constitutes a quorum, and I may call this to order. I do have two announcements. I'd like for the RTM to welcome the newest member of the RTM, sworn in this evening in District 6, Caucus Den. If you would welcome Trevor Holly, if you may stand up. Trevor is the newest member. So with that, District 6 is now at 100% capacity. We do have a new vacancy, however, in District 1. So District 1, if you do know of anyone in your neighbors who would like to join the RTM, you had a resignation today. John Sartorius, and then there is one vacancy that still remains in District 5 and District 3. So please either contact me or the district chair, contact information can be found on the town website. And with that, I will turn it over to your moderator, Seth Morton.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Great to see a crowd in here tonight. Congratulations. Urge those who couldn't make it to be there in June. First item here tonight is acceptance of the agenda. I'll accept the agenda without objection. And then approval of the minutes of April 21st. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes? Thank you, Jim. A second. Thank you, Farrah. Focus is getting better. Great. Any corrections, additions to the minutes? Okay. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Don't hear any. All right. And any abstentions, you can notify Krista. First item of action on the agenda is 2513, appropriation of $3 million from the unassigned fund balance. And primary on this is the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
Good evening. I'm Jack Davis. You're going to see a lot of me tonight. District 3, Finance and Budget Chair. Before I move 2513 to authorize and appropriate $3 million from the unassigned fund balance to fund the capital projects, I'd first like to request that all the members of the F&B committee stand up and be recognized. This is a team effort, and from me to the committee, thank you. This is a good time for an overview that I usually start these things with. Last year, the F&B committee stated that fiscal 26 and beyond was going to be a tough year. We stand by our projection. Most of you know that the mill rate increase for fiscal year 26 is going to be over 5%. In our opinion, this is not a one-time anomaly. Future years' mill rate increases of 4 to 5% should not be unexpected. In the past, Darien overall mill rate increases benefited from grand list growth over 1%, significant budgeted investment revenue surpluses, and tax collections well over the budgeted amounts. The levels of these benefits are not expected in future years. Grand list growth will continue, but not at the same pace. The revow greatly increased the overall grand list, and the 3 major projects have been or nearing completion. Budgeted investment revenues have been tightened, and at the same time rates are falling. So the incremental investment income we've had in prior years we should not have in 26 and 27 going forward. Collected tax percentage increased significantly, and the 25% basis point, and I said I would do this once, a basis point is 1/100th of 1%, so 25 basis points equals 1/4 of 1%. That's the last time I'm explaining that. So the collection rate calculation has been reduced from 25 to 15. That means more taxes are budgeted to be collected, resulting in a lower tax collection surpluses at the end of the fiscal year. It's also reasonable to expect 4% growth in both the Board of Selectmen and Board of Ed operating budgets, even with efficiencies, that delivering the services and educational quality that our residents expect, those increases are reasonable. Healthcare continues to grow in both operating budgets. But I want to give a warning. Just because I said that we expect that, this is not giving either of those boards an open checkbook. Darien has made prudent investments in our schools, infrastructure, and open space. As well as discussed later, these investments need to be paid back. That's kind of the concept, that eventually you have to pay back the things that you borrow. Some have not even started to pay back the principal of what we've borrowed. We're paying interest only. The $49 million bond anticipation note, which you'll hear me say bans for most of this, are planned to be converted into from one-year debt to long-term debt next spring. And rates for long-term debt are higher than one-year short-term debt. So that will increase what we expect to see in 27. Now, I do want to say that while debt service for fiscal year 24 and 26 have grown by approximately $2.7 million or 17%, I did a little ratio, and I compared the debt service for the grand list for 26, and I compared that to the debt service ratio to the 24 grand list, which was $8.8 billion. And actually, that percentage that we're paying now is a lower percentage than what we paid compared to our grand list in 2024. Let me leave with some positive news. Darien is in very sound financial position. Our town maintains a AAA rating and meets all liquidity guidance and requirements. We have invested in creating schools for the future. We have increased our open space and improved our parks. We have the resources and tax base to continue to maintain our town assets and infrastructure, as well as invest in the future. Lastly, we have a great group of highly dedicated town and school employees that continue to make Darien a very desirable place to live. And I do want to give a shout out here. I don't know how many of you actually work with Jen Chinesky, but from September to April, she was our Director of Finance and our Town Administrator. And we got quick responses, we had good reports and everything, and so I'd like to give her a hand. I didn't tell her I was going to embarrass her. One last note. I want to thank Dr. Adley for your leadership and your service to our town. You will be missed. So now that I got us to do a little exercise before this meeting starts, I want to move 2513 to authorize the appropriation of $3 million for the unassigned fund balance to the capital accounts projects. Do I have a second? I see Rolf and I see Mark there. I will read the resolution. Whereas the Board of Finance has reviewed the June 30th, 2025 projected general fund assigned balance, and whereas the Board of Finance has determined that it would like to utilize a portion of the unassigned fund balance to fund capital projects that would otherwise have been funded through property taxes in the fiscal year 2026 budget, now therefore be it resolved that the representative town meeting hereby authorizes and approves this appropriation in the amount of $3 million from the unassigned fund balance to fund capital projects that would have otherwise been funded through the transfer of the general fund in the 2026 budget. I want to go through some real quick things here. So what's on this screen? We started with an audited balance of about $33.8 million. We had one transaction coming out of the general fund this year, which we voted on. That was the police facilities and public works positions for approximately $89,000. That was Resolution 2439. There's an evaluation of what is done and what we expect to have in surpluses in that. And I'm going to go to the next slide briefly, but projected revenue surpluses are approximately 1.8 million. Projected expense is 1.1 million. And while I have here, this is what the Board of Finance planned on. There was about 460,000 surplus at the time that they were doing the budget. From the Board of Ed. I know that that has been slightly reduced because of the search, and a little bird also mentioned that there was some books on some things for the cell phones that may also be coming out of that fund. So, but we expect at least 400,000 coming back to the town. That generated approximately $3.3 million. Now, you're looking at the percentages on the side. We have guidance that says that when we compare our general fund balance to our revenues, we want it to be at a minimum 12%, but 16% is really a healthier number to have. So we started this year with a 19%. With the monies coming in, we're at a 20%. With the transfer of the $3 million, we're down to 18.5%, which remains a healthy balance. Now we can go to the next slide. I just want to quickly go over some of these before we go to the next part of this. So what we have here is we had a lot of vacancies in our expenses, and that's what really drove this. We also saw a significant increase in our collection of property taxes. We had incremental revenue on the telecom property tax, interest and liens when we collected, and the tipping fees, which were offset by some additional expenses. But overall, that explains why we're getting so much back from those basic areas. Now, this resolution before us is the allocation of the unassigned balance to reduce the capital projects needed to be raised. Let me first remind everyone that the general fund balances can only be used to reduce of outstanding debt, capital, or for special appropriations. Unassigned fund balances cannot, and let me repeat that, cannot be used to offset operating budgets. Upon approval, the RTM is authorizing the transfer from the town's general fund to the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures, which is our capital account, to be made prior to the end of the year. This is to address the 10-day waiting period after the RTM votes and has the funds available in that fund July 1st. So even though we do this in budget, it is not a budget resolution, because if we did it in a budget resolution, it wouldn't be available to July 10th. So this is a separate resolution, so the money's sitting there when it comes to July 1st. I just want to end with that the RTM Finance and Budget Committee unanimously approved the authorization and approval of the appropriation to transfer $3 million from the unassigned fund balance, the general fund, to the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures or capital account, and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. This is the first item, and you can see the amount of work that it took to produce this. We're just starting here, and you're going to see how much effort and time it took to be able to put a complicated subject into a format that you could understand and feel comfortable voting on. So I think Jack, as the chair of the Finance and Budget Committee, and of course the Finance and Budget Committee itself, plus the other committees that are going to report here tonight, deserve a great deal of credit. They have done a lot of work, and you'll see the benefit of it here as we go along this evening. Are there any other committees that want to talk about the $3 million? Town officials? I don't see any comment from the body? Okay. Elected town electors? Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Opposed? And abstentions? I don't see anybody moving. Okay, we'll move right along then to 2514A, approval of the capital improvement plan, and that chair is of the Finance and Budget Committee, Jack Davis.
I am Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. I move 2514A, approval of the fiscal year 2026 to 2031 capital improvement plan as presented in the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget. Do I have a second? I have Pierre. I will read the resolution. Whereas the most recent accounting practices require documentation establishing the approval of a capital improvement plan, now, therefore, be it resolved that the representative town meeting hereby approves the fiscal year 2026 to 2031 capital improvement plan as presented in the 2026 proposed budget. The town receives money from the state for a grant called LoCIP, which is Local Capital Improvement Program. The LoCIP program requires that projects funded with the LoCIP grant be included in the most recent approved capital improvement plan. The CT Local Capital Improvement Plan distributes formula-based funds to municipalities for eligible local capital improvements such as roads, bridges, or public building construction activities pursuant to CGS&A 7-535 through 7-538. I want to cover what this plan is and what the plan is not. We are approving that the town has a 6-year capital plan. The RTM is not approving all of the various projects that were in this document. They all require separate votes. In fact, the items for 2026 we'll be voting on at the next resolution, not here. This is, again, just saying, does the town have this plan? And the answer is, we do. The plan is also non-inclusive of all future projects. It simply reflects those projects that the town has a fix on: vehicle replacement, facilities maintenance, radio replacement, fire engines, just name a few. Projects for fiscal year 27 and beyond will be added. If you notice, there's nothing there for Great Island. There's nothing there for new sidewalks. And there's other projects that came on, such as the Hanson Road Bridge Replacement Project, that was added, that was never on this plan. When something came up, we ended up fixing it. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee has reviewed the plan. Several RTM standing committees have also reviewed the plan within their respective area. The Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously to approve that the town has a 6-year capital improvement plan and recommends passage of the same by the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Finance and Budget is a primary on this, but are there any other committees that wish to report? Rolf, please. Oh, you can, please, Rolf. For a committee report, come.
You flatter me. Rolf Obin, District 4, Public Works Committee Chair. Thank you, Seth, for giving me the opportunity to speak about the adoption of the 6-year plan. Today we have before us a capital expenditure budget that, unlike budgets of the past, has no provision for added sidewalks. There's nothing at all listed for added sidewalks. On May 1st, the RTM Public Works Committee voted by a margin of 10-2 to disapprove the fiscal year 2026 through 2031 6-year capital plan due to insufficient funding of sidewalks. The vote is rooted to a Public Works Committee initiative that started over 2.5 years ago to review the Pedestrian Infrastructure Advisory Committee, or acronym PIAC, report of December 2015, so that's 10 years ago. During the committee meeting of October 5th, 2023, conclusions from that review were adopted by a margin of 5-4. Those conclusions are as follows. Many of the priorities of the 2015 PIAC report remain outstanding. We urge the town and Board of Selectmen to commit to addressing deficiencies in sidewalks, crosswalks, and all forms of pedestrian infrastructure. We recommend that the Board of Selectmen establish a second Pedestrian Infrastructure Committee to represent, PIAC 2, if you will, to include representation from multiple RTM committees and diverse groups in town. And lastly, to establish quantifiable goals, develop and share guidelines for project prioritization, and invest sufficient resources to plan and execute pedestrian infrastructure projects. 1 year later, October 10th, 2024, the committee met with First Selectman John Zagrodzky to discuss pedestrian safety and the 2015 PIAC report. Mr. Zagrodzky agreed to bring this to the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen has budgeted for this coming budget vote $20,000 to hire a consultant who we believe will be hired for the purpose of having a set of principles under which added sidewalks can be targeted and prioritized for the best use, impact, and maximization of safety. Regardless of tonight's vote on the 6-year plan, the Public Works Committee will pursue funds for this initiative in future capital plans. So this is a 6-year plan. It has implications beyond just the Public Works Committee, and I'm sure everybody will vote overall in their interest to the plan, but the committee felt strongly that we had to come out with some sort of statement that this is something we feel is important and that we will continue to pursue into the future. And with that, I'll turn the floor back to any other further comment.
Thank you, Rolf. Any other committees? Town officials? Oh, yes. Okay, Mac.
Hi, I'm Mac Patrick, District 5. I chair Public Health and Safety. We met last Wednesday with 9 of 12 members present. We voted unanimously to support the 6-year plan, the capital plan, but we did want to point out that within the plan there are 4 fire vehicles that are listed, each over $1 million. They come in various years, and it's just really important for us to all follow that because often it comes up where people suggest, where did this come from? But they're in there. They're in there. So we just wanted to let everybody know that. But again, we voted unanimously to support the plan. Thank you.
Okay, others, okay. Town officials? Yes, Mr. Zavratsky, first selectman. For the first selectman, please.
Evening, friends. Hope everyone's doing well. So I'll address Rolf's good comment. I recommend that you decouple the 6-year capital plan with all of the capital projects that we're doing. And the reason for that is that imagine I was come to you and say, well, we want to start budgeting now for the renovation of the Middlesex Middle School. What would you say if I just said that and say, we need to put down, I don't know, $60 million. Does anybody agree that that's the right thing to do? What if it's 30 million? What if it's 90 million? We have no cost estimate. No one's done any planning. We don't really have any bids from any engineers or contractors. We just don't know. So would that be a useful exercise for me to take up your evening with? No. Why? Because we just don't have any numbers. Are we going to eventually do a Middlesex renovation project? Absolutely. Do I have any clue about that other than what I just said? No. So our sidewalks are the same thing. Right now, what we have is a plan to initiate an effort around scoping out additional sidewalks that we might consider for the town. I do want to recreate a pedestrian infrastructure advisory committee. The problem with the one that we had 10 years ago is that it was just town citizens, right? So there was no sort of professional entity or person working in parallel with that committee. And as a result, a lot of the effort that went into that infrastructure committee was wasted because the recommendations that they came up with, in many cases, were impractical or inconsistent with best practices from our police or from our legal traffic authority. So what I want to do is make sure we have a professional, just like we have with building committees, which are comprised of citizens as well as professional contractors, to work in exactly the same way so that what we end up with are a set of recommendations that a professional has helped us with, and that when you guys get them, you'll look at them and say, yes, not only are these feasible recommendations, but they're properly prioritized based on the town's wants and needs. So are we going to spend more money on sidewalks? Yes, we are. Are we going to get a professional to help us scope out criteria for adopting sidewalks and how do we prioritize them? Yes, we will. And are we going to have citizen input? Exactly what Ralph says, which is from this body, but also from different parts of town, so that we have broad input? Absolutely. I'm not going to do sidewalks by squeaky wheel, and I do have some of those for sidewalks. We're going to do it, God bless them, right? But what we're going to do, how many of you would like that approach versus an approach that says we have involvement from multiple parts of towns and multiple groups? We have the support of a compensated professional who knows how to do sidewalks, so that when I come to you for an appropriation, you'll say, this was done in a fair, transparent way with support from a professional. Personally, I think that's the right way to go, and that's the way we're going to do it. So I really, not to put too fine on a point, but I appreciate all these points. I think part of the frustration from Ralph, which is well placed, is that here we are, we haven't moved on it yet. This takes a while to get these experts pulled together and to get our minds around it, but I promise we are going to pursue this in a transparent and professional way. So more to come on it. If anybody in this body has a particular interest, and I've heard from a couple already, participating in this or wants to get briefed on kind of how we're thinking about sidewalks, or just wants to lobby to have a sidewalk put in their area. By the way, you have to clear it if there's a snowstorm, so watch it. Call me, come see me. I'm happy to talk to you about it. But let's get this right, and that's what I commit to. The last thing I'll say is that this capital plan is really just this weird animal that we have to deal with. It really is just so that we have access to these LoCIP grants. You can't get them for anything unless they're in your 6-year capital plan. So I get the protest there. Please don't vote against this. We need to have this so we qualify for those grants. That's it. That's the only reason to do this. Everything else is going to be done through a process like I described before. If you got questions, call me. Thank you.
you can see in these, in the annual budget hearing, we like to keep things simple and straightforward. Jack? Comments? Any F&B? Okay. All right, so this is simply a vote for the capital improvement plan. Doesn't include the 6-year plan. Questions from the body other than those who've already spoken? Yes, sir.
Hi, Ian Laird, District 5, on the Public Works Committee. Appreciate the comments, Jack, very much appreciate where you're coming from on the capital plan to move this to get the grants. The one piece I would like to add on the sidewalks, though, with all due respect, Mr. First Selectman, is that if I look at that budget, it explicitly states that the maintenance of our sidewalks will go from $500,000 to $100,000. So we're intending to cut the maintenance of our sidewalk infrastructure by 80% over 6 years. That's what's in the budget or in the capital plan. So I hear the need to approve it. My ask is that as we do this again next year, I'd like to see the maintenance look like our sewers, look like our roads, which are a very stable, flat number across the 6 years. That is the indication that it's to tell that we intend to maintain. But that's not what's in the capital plan.
Thank you. Listening to the First Selectman's remarks, I hear that the door is open for discussion, and let's see, we have 12 months to do it, so can go in there and fill up the room in the Board of Selectmen meetings and enjoy the dialogue. Okay, so we ready? Let's see, any electors of the any further from the body? Okay, electors of the town. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Opposed? And abstentions? All right. The next item on the agenda has a number of committees that are going to report. So what I will do is recognize the committees in advance, and then as each one finishes, the next committee can come forward, save us a little time, and keep the ball rolling. First off will be Finance and Budget, Jack Davis. Then Education Committee, Elizabeth Lucas, right?
Oh, this is on capital? Yes.
Yeah.
Capital.
Reserve, this is 2514B, appropriation for the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures. So it's F&B, and then Education with Elizabeth Lucas, Public Works, Ralph Olben, Park and Rec, Adele Coniff, and Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick. Just stroll up as you hear the other person finish. Jack?
Slide change. I'm Jack Davis, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. I move Resolution 25-14B, resolved that an appropriation of $6,180,250 is hereby made from the Reserve Fund for Capital Non-Recurring Expenditures for the purpose of meeting expenses of the town of Darien as shown by the budget this day approved. Do I have a second? I have Dan. The total capital requests are $6,180,250, up 47% from the prior year. The Board of Ed capital is slightly up. However, part of that is we're just rebuilding all the schools, so there really shouldn't be a lot of other capital going there. Town request is up 59% from $3 million in fiscal year '25 to $4.8 million in fiscal year '26. The details will be reported by the standing committees on the capital initiatives within their respective areas. There are a few capital projects not included in the capital request, but are anticipated to come to the RTM later. They include Weed Beach, Pear Tree Parking Lot, and the basin, dredging of the basin, a fire engine, and quite honestly, there's the dredging of the channel that will also be coming. Last year, and I've mentioned this to this body, the Board of the Board of Selectmen set guidance for what allows something to come off cycle. Something off cycle is something that does not happen on the budget night. In order for something to come off cycle, it has to be discussed during the budget process. That's why we've already mentioned Weed Beach, Pear Tree, the knowledge that a fire engine is coming, and the dredging. All those could come off cycle either in the next couple months or later, but they do meet the criteria for an off-cycle capital project. We have included an accounting of the Board of Finance contingency account. That's the next slide, which basically, this is where projects are closed out. If there's small adjustments to projects because they're over budget, this allows certain funds to go. Anything of a large amount has to come back to the RTM. Those amounts that are up there are not. You see that $321,000 was closed out from projects, which means that we authorized more than what it eventually cost to do it, so that goes into this fund. The F&B committee voted unanimously in favor of authorizing the appropriation of $6,180,250 from the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures for the purpose of meeting expenses of the town of Darien as shown in this budget this day, approved, and recommends the same to the full RTM.
Elizabeth. Lucas?
Liza Lucas, yep.
Liza.
Good evening. I'm Liza Lucas from District 6. I'm the chair of the RTM Education Committee. Thank you to Jack Davis for moving. Is that better? Okay. Thank you to Jack Davis for moving 25-14B and detailing the more than $6 million of capital expenditures. I'm going to speak about the $1,339,150 dedicated to the Board of Education's capital budget. Okay. Is that better? Okay. That is part of this appropriation. The approximately $1.3 million Board of Education capital budget includes $687,000 worth of improvements to Darien High School. These improvements include energy-saving LED lighting, resurfacing 20-year-old blacktop surfaces on the side areas of DHS, green roof waterproofing to repair a leak in the cafeteria, and replacement doors at the main entrance, library entrance, and athletic entrances to increase security and to allow for the entry of large items. At Middlesex Middle School, we will see an upgrade to the school radio system for $38,400, and that is a part of the radio replacement cycle. At Tokenique Elementary School, $318,000 will be spent on new paving in the bus loop and parking lot, which is original to the school's construction approximately 15 years ago, a new fence around the school playground, and rewiring the school's main entrance for additional security enhancements. District-wide, additional improvements of $295,750 will include replacing windows, sidewalks, and updating security measures at Central Office, replacing 2 vehicles, including a 2012 truck and a 2015 Suburban, purchasing a new lawnmower, as well as a new custodial floor scrubber. Our committee discussed the Board of Education capital budget throughout the budget season, and most recently at our committee meeting on May 5th with 13 of 15 members present. Although we could not vote on 24-14B as we could not opine on the non-education portion of the budget, we support the $1,339,150 education capital budget that is part of this appropriation, and we recommend the full RTM to do the same.
Rolf?
Thank you. Thank you. Rolf Oben, Public Works Committee Chair. So, for the 2026 fiscal year Public Works CapEx budget, we are presenting for approval. The proposed Public Works 2026 fiscal year capital expenditure budget is $2,304,540, representing a 9.7% increase of $205,040 over the prior year. Primary reason for the increase is the reestablishment of $500,000 rehabilitation for sidewalks and $125,000 for the replacement of an aging truck. Preliminary elements of the 2025-26 proposed capital budget are $1,404,540 for annual road paving, $500,000 for sidewalk rehabilitation. Just a side note, just for something for you all to be aware of as well, I've had recent contact with Ed Gentile. He is embarking on a $300,000 program that will go over the course of several years to install ADA compliant on-off ramps at sidewalks. $125,000 replacement of an aging Public Works truck, $150,000 for Old Kings Highway South and Camp Avenue design and repair for bridge scouring. Scouring has been causing us a number of problems. That's what caused the demise of the Hanson Road Bridge, and it's also brought on the repairs that are going on with the the Rings End Bridge and the dam, the Gorms Pond Dam. $90,000 investments in various town hall repairs and replacement, i.e. carpet replacement, office painting, etc., and $25,000 for the gym entrance bridge repair design, okay, and that's just for the design, $25,000. It'll be interesting to see how that develops into an actual approved plan and what that cost will eventually be. That could also end up being another thing to add to the capital expenditure plan. On May 1, 2025, the Public Works 2026 fiscal year capital expenditure budget was approved unanimously by the RTM Standing Committee on Public Works and recommends same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. And speaking for Park and Rec, Adele Conniff.
$2514B, appropriation in the reserve fund for capital and non-recurring expenditures, Parks and Recreation, $732,000. The Parks and Recreation Committee has carefully followed the Parks and Recreation fiscal year 26 capital improvements budget process. This capital improvement request is for $732,000. Still is, sorry. Cherry Lawn, $165,000 is requested to dredge the pond. The pond is in poor condition with trees in it, as well as 1.5 to 3 feet of sediment, depending on the area, resulting in negative impacts on plants and water species. Dredging will provide an opportunity for the ecosystem to return to its proper state. McGuan Park. $14,500 is requested to replace the railings on the accessible ramp. The railings are in poor condition with peeling paint and rough edges that could result in people getting splinters. Tilly Pond Park. $381,000 is requested to dredge the large pond. Tilly Pond receives water from catch basins throughout a portion of town and has been filling in with sediment and debris. There's approximately 1 to 1.5 feet of accumulated sediment throughout the pond. Due to the shallow depth and nutrients such as nitrogen and phosphorus, the pond has been exhibiting cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, growth in the warmer months, which emits a foul odor and can be dangerous to animals and people. Dredging should reduce the occurrences and the need to treat the water. Weed Beach. $20,500 is requested to strip one paddle court. This is the third year of a 5-year plan to refurbish the paddle courts. We have 6 paddle courts, one of which is new. Weed Beach Project, short lane property development. Though reviewed through the budget process, is not part of the reserve fund request. This project will be brought off cycle for funding. Pear Tree Beach. Pear Tree Beach project was reviewed during the budget process, but is not part of this reserve fund request. This project will also be brought off cycle for funding. Parks and Recreation equipment. $5,000 is requested for small capital. This is an unassigned appropriation for miscellaneous needs. $6,000 is requested for tree replacement. This will provide funds for the department to replace trees that have been lost or removed, maintaining and potentially increasing the tree canopy. This was moved from the operating budget during the budget process. $107,700 is requested for a replacement loader. This replaces a 20-year-old loader which is used for multiple tasks: beach raking, storm cleanup, removal of logs and debris. The 3 attachments will make various tasks more efficient, such as snow, sand, and log removal. $13,500 is requested for accessible mats for beaches, 1 mat for each beach. We currently have a lack of accessibility at our beaches. The accessible matting allows wheelchairs to access the water. $8,000 is requested for a log grapple. This attachment will make the maintenance of our facilities more efficient. This grapple can be used by multiple pieces of equipment, making it versatile for tasks of various sizes, increases the safety of staff during cleanup. $5,800 is requested for a replacement lift gate for a truck. The old gate is in poor condition. $5,000 is requested for a portable sound system. The sound system is to be shared with other town departments. The system allows versatility for smaller and larger events and provides clearer and louder sound to reach larger crowds. It is a battery-operated wireless and has Bluetooth capabilities. The system is better as well as much simpler to use than our current large system. The original request was for $11,400. This request supports the system with 1 speaker instead of 2. Not supported was the request for a financial sustainability strategy. The Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 7th, 2025, with 13 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum, and voted unanimously in favor of the Parks and Recreation portion of the fiscal year 26 Reserve Fund for Capital and Non-Recurring Expenditures, and urges the RTM to do the same. Thank you. Oh, Adele
Thank you,
Coniff.
Adele.
Sorry, and I'm Adele Coniff, District 3. Sorry.
And Chair.
Thanks, Adele. I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety, and I'm in District 5. Our committee met on Wednesday, May 7th, with 9 of 12 members present, and we discussed the capital non-recurring expenditures that relate to public health and safety. Of note, we discussed the police have $275,000 for vehicle replacement. The Darien Fire Department has $300,000 to replace the boiler and roof replacement. The Norotan Fire Department, $50,000 to clean and paint the truck room. Norotan Heights Fire Department will be spending $2 million for the retaining wall. Fire Commission authorizes $300,000 for a ground training classroom. Fire Marshal, $125,000 for a vehicle replacement, and the Public Health Department, $36,000 to establish OpenGov. But we voted unanimously to approve these, and we ask that you do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. I think we've covered about all the committees, but I'll just check and see if I missed anybody. No? Elected officials? Okay. The body, any comments from the body? Electors of the town? Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. And opposed? And abstentions. Next item is appropriations in the general fund. And first one is the Selectmen's operating budget. Finance and budget will start. And then Rolf from Public Works, Rolf Olben, Adele Conniff from Park and Rec, Public Health and Safety, Mac Patrick, and Planning, Zoning, and Housing, Amy Zabatakis, okay? So without further ado, Jack Davis.
This is a three-part harmony. We're going to vote on the Board of Selectmen budget, which has three component parts. We're going to vote on the Board of Ed operating budget, and then we're going to prove that this body knows how to add, which is the last. Each of them will be voted on separately. Can we go to the next slide? By the way, I do want to give a shout out. Lois Snyder has been working with me on putting these slides together, making them pretty, and fixing all the errors that I had in them. So, I'm Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Committee Chair. I move Resolution 2514C resolved that an appropriation of $58,393,677 is hereby made in the general fund for the Selectmen's operating budget. Do I have a second? I have Michael over there. Okay. As I said, there's three parts to the Selectmen budget. Historically, which actually started with this gentleman, Seth, when he was chair of the F&B committee, F&B actually votes on each of the three component parts separately. So we vote on the operating budget, we'll vote on the library grant, and we vote on debt service. I want to show you this slide because there is a difference between the Board of Selectmen. I'm not as tall as Rolf. There is a difference between the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Ed budget. The Board of Ed budget is a net budget where we approve a total appropriation. The Board of Selectmen budget has the revenues associated with them applied when we calculate the mill rate to determine what funds needed to be raised through taxes. So it doesn't show up here. F&B is responsible on the operating budget for three basic areas. The general government is up $142,000 or 3.6%, and the drivers excluding contractual salary increases. The register of voters is up 26 mil or 19%, and elections are up 14,000 rather, not mil, and 21%. Both are due to what's coming on due to the early voting process. There's an information technology is up 31,000 or 7%. I believe that we're doing a new accounting system, which has been something that John Zagroski and myself have been talking about for probably a decade. And so we're really happy to see that happening. Probate court, which is up 46%, even though it's $3,000, but because the percentage was so large, I thought I'd mention it. As has been mentioned, there is a sidewalk consultant for $20,000. Hopefully this generates what I think all of us are looking for on those sidewalks. Increases in general overhead is up $185,000 or 1.85. This includes risk management, which remain level, pension contributions, healthcare, which is up about 5%. Interesting, when you look at the pension plan contributions, we're seeing an increase in the defined contribution plan, but we're also seeing a decrease in the defined benefit pension contribution. Right now, the first one is a little bit larger, but we knew this when the pensions plans were changed for new employees. So that's good to see that that's actually working. The other thing is funds to be transferred for the Great Island Management Fund, which will be discussed in greater detail later, decrease from $225,000 in 2025 to only $76,000 in change this year. These funds are only used when needed to cover expenses, and Mark Idoletta will give a more in-depth report on this later. So I'm going to leave right now, and I'll come back later for the library and debt, but now it's standing committee time. Thank you.
There we go. And Ralph Owen.
Rolf Oben, District 4, Public Works Committee Chair. Okay, so this year, the Public Works operating budget is a total of $5,583,200. The town proposes a year-over-year Public Works operating budget expense increase of $380,464, representing an increase of 7.31% over the 2025 adopted budget. This increase is partially offset by a 6.2% increase in revenue of $137,461. Primary costs incurred by the Public Works Department include salaries and benefits, 46%, solid waste disposal, 31%, utilities and fuel, 11%. Since 2022, administrative services and roadway management has increased at the lowest rates of 16 to 17% in total, while waste management and parking management, but particularly waste management, have risen 35 to 36% in total. The primary driver of the fiscal year 2026 Public Works operating budget growth is related to solid waste disposal. Under the new contract with Wind Waste, in effect since July 2024, the town's full-year costs are expected to rise by $243,556, or 64% of the Public Works year-over-year expense increase. So that's the majority of the increase. Without this single expense variance, the operating budget would increase by only 2.6%, driven by full-time salaries. On May 1st, 2025, the fiscal year 2026 Public Works operating budget was unanimously approved by the RTM Standing Committee on Public Works and recommends the same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Ralph. Adele Coniff, Chair of Park and Recreation Committee.
Adele Coniff, District 3, Parks and Recreation Committee Chair. 25-14 fiscal year 26 appropriations in the General Fund C, Selectmen's operating budget, Parks and Recreation. Revenues. Revenue from beach parking permits, building and grounds rentals, Weed Beach concession rental fees, seasonal fees from youth sports leagues, facility permits, boat permits, tennis court and pickleball reservations, kayak rentals, and community events is projected to be $1,064,500 in fiscal year 26. Fiscal year 25 revised budget revenue was $957,300. Charges for services, $691,500, miscellaneous, $36,000, other financing sources, $337,000. The increase in anticipated revenue is primarily attributed to an increase in fees. Tennis court reservations in 2025 were comparable to 2024. Pickleball reservations were down, likely due to an increase in requested open play time and usage of court time for lessons. To date, beach permit sales are almost even with 2024, with revenue up 5.8%. Paddle court usage continues to move toward pre-pandemic levels. Seasonal kayak storage continues to be oversubscribed, and participation in events remains high. Expenditures. The Parks and Recreation portion of the fiscal year 26 Selectmen's operating budget is $1,948,901, an increase from the fiscal year 25 revised budget of $1,831,132. The Parks and Recreation Department is responsible for and has jurisdiction for day-to-day operations in our parks. Department maintenance personnel maintains 210 acres of parkland, as well as several other town properties, including Highland Farm. They also maintain the facilities at Weed Beach, Pear Tree Beach, Cherry Lawn Park, McGuan Park, Baker Park, Selleck's Woods and Woodlands Park Nature Preserves, and Town Hall and Holohan Fields. The Parks and Recreation Department is also responsible for town-organized programs and events open to the public, which are operated on a self-sustaining basis. Personnel, $1,272,108. Contractual services, $552,543. Materials and supplies, $120,250. Equipment and facilities, $4,000. There is no increase in FTEs in this budget, though 39% of the increase is due to salary increases for full-time staff, including overtime, part-time, and seasonal employees. In general, supplies and materials are increasing in price. Electricity is up, along with heating fuel, but pest control is down due to contract cost reduction, and security services down as well due to better contract bids. Tree removal, which is contracted out, is increasing, and maintenance of the dunes and in front of the guard shack at Weed Beach is being outsourced as well. Eradicating the mugwort on the dunes and planting grasses is a labor-intensive and multi-year process which the department lacks staff to execute. Because donations are becoming less available, there's extra money for fireworks in this budget. Also, our portable toilet rentals fees are increasing as we ensure they are accessible to all residents. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee followed the budget process beginning in 2024 as the commission put together this budget. Jennifer Fava, Parks and Recreation Department Director, reviewed the proposed budget line by line with our committee in January. Thank you to the department and the commission for your help as we move through the budget process from the commission to the town administrator, Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Finance. Also, thank you to our finance and budget counterparts and the Board of Finance designated members for their thoughtful budget questions. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 7, 2025, with 13 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum, and voted unanimously in support of the Parks and Recreation portion of the fiscal year 26 Board of Selectmen's operating budget and encourages the RTM to do the same. The Park and Rec Committee also follows Community and Environment. 2025-14C, Selectmen's operating budget, Community Environment. The Community Environment portion of the fiscal year 26 Selectmen's operating budget is $157,898. Darien Beautification Commission proposed budget is $34,600, $5,000 less than fiscal year 25. Monuments and Ceremonies Commission proposed budget is $21,910, $5,500 increase from fiscal year 25 due to cemetery repair and maintenance increase. Darien Harbor Master's proposed budget is $300 increase from fiscal year 25. Other grants include Holiday Lights, the Museum of Darien Depot, and Kids in Crisis, which totals $98,088. The RTM Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 7th with 13 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum, and voted unanimously in support of the fiscal year 2026 Community Environment budget and asked the RTM for their support.
Thank you, Adele. Now from Public Health and Safety, Mike Patrick.
Hi. Once again, I'm Mac Patrick, Chair of Public Health and Safety, member of District 5. Public Health and Safety met on Wednesday, May 7th, with 9 of 12 members present, and we discussed portions of the budget relating to fire, police, other public safety, and human services. Some of the aspects of the budget we talked about were the police budget has an overall increase of 5.7%, assuming full staffing. Under the fire budget, there's an over 10% increase due to workload with multiple mixed-use development coming online, plus plan reviews. This equals an increased load for mandatory code-compliant inspections. The fire budget is approximately 1/4 of the police budget, and the town benefits greatly from a mostly volunteer fire department. Post 53 expenditures are down 9%. It's noteworthy that the high school staffing of Post 53 is an all volunteer, and much of the operation is self-funded through donations. Town funding is $157,000, and the average response time with lights and sirens is about 6.3 minutes. There are 1,900 projected annual incidents, about 5 a day. It's really just terrific work. The human services and outside assistance, the senior center, senior transportation, youth services, and public health department overall budgets are flat. Youth services budget has a strong enrollment with increased revenue offsetting costs. Public health department's budget of $448,000 is offset by revenue of $152,750, and that's from food licenses and permits. So our committee voted unanimously to support these aspects, and we ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mac. And now, on behalf of Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee, Amy Zabatek is chair, and the first time this evening.
So lovely to see you all. Hi, Amy Zabatakis, District 5, Chair of RTM Planning, Zoning, and Housing. On April 17th, the Planning, Zoning, and Housing Committee held our regular meeting with 12 of our 14-person committee present, representing a quorum. Jeremy Ginsburg, Director of Land Use, was present during our meeting to provide an overview of the zoning and building department budgets and answer our questions. As per our conversation with Mr. Ginsburg, the expenses for both departments are relatively flat, with the main change being increased personnel costs required by existing contracts. Mr. Ginsburg did confirm to us that staffing levels are appropriate for both departments. On the revenue side, Planning and Zoning Department is expected to have flat revenues. There is a slightly expected increase in revenue on the building department side from permit fees related to the new commercial developments. This is probably the last year that we'll continue to see the increases on the building department side. Based on our review of the budget with Mr. Ginsburg, our committee voted unanimously in favor of the proposed land use budgets and recommends the same to the RTM.
Great, Amy. And now Jack. Talk about the library and Ted. There's an interesting combination.
We're going to start with the library. I want to thank Louisa Brockman and Pierre for doing a lot of work on the library, and for a reward, they get to do the report. Library.
Good evening. I'm Per Sexa, District 4, member of the F&B Committee, and I want to thank Louisa for showing me the way, since this is my first effort on the budget. Yes. As you see behind me, the budget for the library grant is up about $155,000. That represents a total increase of about 3.4%. It's driven primarily by an increase in salaries and benefits and a minor de minimis increase in FTEs, full-time equivalent employees. As a reminder, there's approximately 70 full-time equivalent individuals working in the library. 30 of them are full-time, 40 of them are part-time or seasonal employees. Salaries are increasing by 3% and continue to be competitive with the overall market, meaning we do get to hire good people and attract them to Darien. There has been a 5.5% overall increase in employee benefits. mostly resulting from rising healthcare costs, which are up about 8.9%, and that's partially offset by a reduction in town retirement costs. Just a note, the library employees are part of the town's pension plan, but are not part of the town's health benefit plan. They instead are a member of the Connecticut State Partnership Plan, which essentially offers a lower cost health plan alternative. You might ask why they're not a member of the town, or vice versa. We can cover that later. But it does save the library some money. Building operations are up about 3.3%, mainly from rising electricity and gas expenses, while support and administration are down 4%. That's a result of decreased auditor expenses from new software they implemented this past year. Risk management is up 10.4%. That's attributed mostly to higher insurance premiums, which we've seen across the board. And otherwise, the library continues to look for efficiencies running their building, and in their overall operating budget, they are very good at pursuing them and do an excellent job making the most of the grant funding the town of Darien provides. One thing, it is important to note that the funds received from the town grant only cover the salaries and benefits of staff, annual building and grounds maintenance, and essential administrative costs. A significant financial contribution is made each year by the Friends of the Library to cover capital expenditures for library equipment and technology, books and other materials, and the building itself. Their contributions make it possible for the Darien Library to provide exceptional library services to the community. And we want to thank the Friends for their tremendous support. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you. And Jack returns for debt.
I'm still Jack Davis. I'm going to try and read some of this, which will totally bore you. On the debt breakdown, it was in the package, but school debt has increased to be 52% of our debt service, and is now at about 8.1 to 8.2 million. Town debt is about 7.3 million, or 46% of the budget, and the remaining debt is about $219,000, which is sewer debt. Now, only the town can issue debt. So the sewer debt that's up there, that is paid by those of us who are hooked up to the sewer and not by taxpayers. So it's repaid by the town, and funds are transferred, which Rolf will get into later, from their assessments over to make the payment on that debt. If I look at the breakdown of year-over-year debt service, there it is. Makes it a lot easier. Schools have increased by 36%. The town is up about 13%, and sewer is up about 18%. Now, if you look at year 2024, that's because that's when Great Island came on, and we started to pay for that. That goes back to what's going on with the school debt. We have not bonded everything for HHR. We are first starting to pay on some of the debt to pay off the principal on Ox Ridge, and we are only paying interest currently on most of the HHR debt. That's not to count some of the other minor things that are going on. So we can expect that to grow. I'll go to the next one. So this shows what debt we're going to be having over the next couple of years. Sorry, I'm not supposed to turn away from the mic. You can see that we're going to be paying down about $30 million of debt from 2026 to 2030. Now, if you look on this, I have the bond anticipation note interest here, and I stop at 2026 because we're going to be rolling that over, it's anticipated, into long-term debt. But we don't know what the terms and conditions are. I actually call the debt part of the operating budget the Board of Finance budget. While we all approve the debt, they determine the structure of how this goes out. So they have a lot of influence on what these numbers are. We do try and do level debt, which means we'll pay for interest in the first couple of years and then pay principal if it's a 20-year note over the next 18 years. Right now, if you look, we have $181 million of outstanding long-term debt at the end of 2026, providing we don't do anything else. But when you add on the bond anticipation note of $49 million, which is not included in the long-term debt, we have approximately $230 million outstanding. If you look at the authorized but unissued debt, we have $92 million. That's only long-term debt, and I'm going to cover that a little bit over here. That unissued, if you take away the $49 million, which brings it down to about, 43, that includes several things like the HHR project that we haven't issued, the Norotan Heights Fire Department retaining wall that we approved recently and then modified again. It also includes about 3 fire engines that we've approved, but we won't be paying for until we actually receive them. The Hanson Road Bridge sidewalk repair, which we're bonding, Gorham Pond Dam, and some other smaller projects. All of those are in the $43 million that we have authorized but isn't issued. Before I go on, based upon certain conversations during this budget process from both members of the RTM and the general public, I've been asked how bonding works. When the town of the Board of Finance and RTMs approves a bond issue, there are 2 component parts. The first part is the appropriation. That's why we are always approving the appropriation and the bonding, which is the funding. They have to be equal to each other. Otherwise, you're not funding what you just appropriated. Bless you. As previously mentioned, all expenditures need to be approved prior to a payment being made. As an example, in the case of a building of a school and the town, will be getting money back from the state and receive a state grant. That does not reduce the amount that the town is writing in a check or an ACH payment to pay a vendor or pay for the expenditures. That amount, the appropriation, will always stay the same. What is reduced is the amount of money that the town needs to fund by either issuing less debt or using some of that grant to pay for the next amount that we do. When the town authorized, as it did, $101 million for the HHR project, the town does not go out to the market immediately and bond for $101 million. We wait. We try to look and bond for what is expected to be spent in the next 9 to 15 months. In the most recent HHR bonding, the Board of Finance decided to go out for 15 months of expenditures as part of that bond issue. The bonding will cover that while the building committee is submitting expenses to the state. We will receive grants that will further reduce that amount. On smaller bond projects, expenditures are quote-unquote borrowed from the general fund to pay for the work being done. Those borrowed funds are returned to the general fund once the project is bonded. So if we have a $2 million project, we will use $2 million of general fund funds, then go to the market. When we get the $2 million of bonding, we will transfer that bonding money or what was borrowed from the general fund back to the general fund. Any debt on a completed project that is not used is eliminated. So it just says that when you're managing the general fund and all these bond and projects, cash management is a very big part of that. The town believes in level debt, which I mentioned, and anticipated conversion of the $49 million band to long-term debt will increase interest expense in fiscal year '27. If you look at it, it currently says that there's $14,500,000 in year 2027. But that doesn't have the interest from the ban, and it doesn't have interest of what's anticipated from rolling it into long-term debt. F&B believes that incremental debt will be between $2.5 to $2.7 million. So you will see that while we have debt of $15 million, approximately $650,000 for fiscal year '26, we're anticipating to have $17 million of debt from that rollover, and if we do nothing else, in 2027. That's part of the reason why we say some expenses are going to continue to grow. The Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously to approve all of 2514C and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I think just about everybody has spoken from a committee standpoint, unless I missed someone who wants to come up. I don't see anybody. Any town officials wish to comment? Anybody in the body? Comments? Yes. Amy.
Thanks. I just had a quick question with respect to the other committees that met with the town hall staff. And that was just, I was very concerned last term when we ended up having to add an additional employee off cycle. And so I just wanted to make sure that there has been confirmation, I don't know who can confirm that to me, that we do feel that all of the various departments are properly staffed or have added into their budgets that have been reported tonight for staffing for the coming year.
Okay. I'll start with Jack. And John will segue immediately to... Okay. John is saying there is no off-cycle hiring anticipated. Great. Other members of the body? Okay. Electors of the town? Ready to vote? All those in favor, please rise.
Again, you're recording, this is C. Charlie.
And, okay, everybody. I know everybody wants to stand for a minute, but I'll ask for opposed. And abstentions. Okay. The next item is the education operating budget. And speaking on behalf of the Education Committee, Liza Lucas. Also speaking for F&B will be Beth Lane. She's going to come up and talk about from F&B about the budget. Thank you. Be bold.
Okay, good evening. Again, I'm Liza Lucas from District 6. I'm the chair of the RTM Education Committee. Tonight, I move 25-14D, resolution of the representative town meeting. Resolved that an appropriation of $125,760,223 is hereby made in the general fund for the Board of Education operating budget, this day approved. Do I have a second? Thank you. Jan. To repeat, the proposed 2026 education budget is over $125 million. This is a 4.92 increase over the roughly $119 million budget in 2025. The drivers of this budget increase are fixed costs, which are in excess of 6% over the past year and include increases in contractual salaries, which are up 2.56%, health insurance and benefits, which is up about 1.25%, special education and reduced ECR, which is excess cost reimbursement from the state for certain special education costs. That's increasing 1.92%. And utilities are up about 0.13%, among other items. Personnel and employee benefits account for 82% of the total budget. The next largest factor is operational accounts, which includes textbooks, consumables, resource materials, and professional development. And that represents about 13% of the proposed budget. Constituting 4% of the budget are fixed costs associated with transportation, property insurance, and utilities such as water, sewer, fuel, and electricity. And the last 1% is made up of equipment costs. New growth represents approximately $530,000 of the total budget, or less than 0.5% at 0.44. The new initiatives include state-mandated kindergarten to third grade reading and play-based learning initiatives, a middle school facility study, EduPlan at 21, which is an online curriculum program, Aspen training, psychology interns, and Teen Talk at Middlesex Middle School. The 2026 education budget includes roughly $2 million in reductions and efficiencies, which is a 1.75% reduction in spending from the past budget cycle. These reductions were realized by the elimination of 5 elementary instructional paraprofessionals, reducing intramural sports programs, the elimination of 1 full-time nurse at Middlesex Middle School, certain technology deferrals, deferral of athletic uniforms at Darien High School. Middlesex Middle School teachers are transitioning from 4 to 5 classes per instructor. Security reorganization, including the elimination of the floating elementary security guard, a transition to 5-day early learning program, special education insourcing, and the transition to in-house special education transportation. The resulting 4.92% budget increase is the product of reducing costs where possible and, importantly, is in line with a 4.56 DIRG-A average increase for education budgets next year. For the sake of clarity, DIRG-A stands for the District Reference Group and comprises districts with similar socioeconomic status and need, such as New Canaan, Ridgefield, Wilton, and Westport. The proposed budget is described by the superintendent as a plan that is responsive to the district mission and vision, Board of Education goals, the district's strategic plan, state legislation, and increased core expenditures, and one that represents the collective efforts of the administration to address identified needs and to deliver the highest quality education possible to all Darien students at the lowest possible cost to the taxpayer. The proposed budget is a product of a lengthy process that included careful consideration of myriad line items. Input was plentiful at Board of Education meetings from the superintendent, members of the administration, Board of Education members, Darien Public School teachers, school building administrators, and staff, and also countless members of the community, including parents and current and former students, during the public comment opportunities and public hearings. The budget discussions at the Board of Education table were detailed and lengthy in an attempt to whittle down the 2026 budget to fit within the 3 to 4% guidance provided by the Board of Finance at the start of the budget process. Some of our committee members argued that the Board of Finance guidance may have stifled conversation about new endeavors, and it may have prompted the administration to suggest cuts that were undesirable to the community. For example, the proposed elimination of the IDEA program and the proposed elimination of 15 paraprofessionals in the elementary schools. For the sake of clarity, the IDEA program has been retained, and 5, not 15 paraprofessional positions were eliminated from the elementary schools. Other committee members believe that an almost 5% budget increase year over year would be unsustainable, and efforts should be made to examine the largest cost centers in an attempt to find efficiencies while preserving the excellent quality of education provided by Darien Public Schools. As part of our operating budget review, our committee would like to recognize the efforts of Superintendent Alan Adley, who has served the Darien School District these past 6 years, including steering us through the COVID pandemic, and who was a steadfast supporter of Darien students and teachers. And one member of our committee rightly noted that Dr. Adley was present at seemingly every school concert and student-facing event. So thank you, Dr. Adley. In summary, the proposed 2026 education budget was carefully scrutinized and unanimously approved by the Board of Education, approved by the Board of Finance, and is in line with the Durgay average increase for education budgets next year. The Education Committee met on Monday, May 5th, 2025, with 13 of 15 members present, constituting a quorum. We voted unanimously to approve the 2026 education budget, and we recommend the full RTM to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza. And now for the Finance and Budget Committee, the head of the Education Subcommittee, I'm thinking, Beth Lane.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Beth Lane, District 3. I represent the Finance and Budget Committee as one of the vice chairs for the education budget. I'd like to also shout out Peter Orfanos, who is the other vice chair for the education budget. And as you can tell, I drew the short straw, so I'm up here, and he's sitting back there. I did tell myself I wasn't going to be duplicative with what Liza was saying, but before I begin the substance of my remarks, I would like to thank Dr. Adley for his years of service to our schools. He took the helm just in time to have to deal with all of the difficulties of COVID, and we're grateful for all he's done to ensure the quality of our children's education. The Board of Education passed a budget of $125,760,223, which represents a 4.92% increase over the current year's budget. As Liza noted, the primary drivers are contractual salary increases, health insurance, and special education tuition and contracted services. This will sound familiar to everybody who was here last year because those were the exact drivers of last year's education budget increases. In all, the core of the budget was up 6.22% over last year, while growth in the budget was 0.44%, so a very modest amount of the budget. The Board of Education found an additional 1.75% in reductions in efficiencies, which is why the budget was able to come in below 5%. And I'd like to take a moment to compliment the board on their process. When it became clear that there were programs and paraprofessionals that parents and students would miss if cut from the budget, they came together to create a package of cuts that would be palatable to the board as a whole, rather than relying on an incremental add and cut process, which is what they usually do. They were thus able to preserve the IDEA program and 10 paraprofessionals at the elementary schools while maintaining the percentage increase proposed by Dr. Adley. I'd like to focus a moment on excess cost, which you always hear about a lot with the education budget. This year's excess cost reimbursement came in well below the 70% rate that was assumed in the this current year's education budget. But ECR was restored to over 70% by the legislature in Hartford in a one-time deal. At present, we expect that the legislature will come to some sort of agreement for upcoming years, but nothing has been set in stone yet. Consequently, next year's budget assumes excess cost reimbursement of 65%. Given the additional funding by the legislature for the current fiscal year, the Board of Finance anticipates that upwards of $400,000 will be returned to the general fund from the schools, as the additional funds from the legislature have turned the deficit into a surplus for this current year. As a note, the district does receive some federal funding, which is built into this budget, although it's quite a slight number. While we believe we'll be receiving the funding in the coming year, this is obviously not something we can state with absolute certainty, given that there's a rather tumultuous time in DC. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as the year progresses, just to make sure it doesn't have an impact on our budget. In sum, the Board of Education managed to keep their proposed budget under 5%. The Board of Finance passed the budget without making any cuts. Our committee met on May 6th with 12 of 15 members present and approved the budget unanimously. We recommend the same to the full RTM.
Thank you, Beth. Any other committees wish to report? Okay. Town officials? Great. Members of the body, comments? And town electors? In that case, all those in favor, please rise. Opposed, please? And abstentions. This next one is easy. We've got to have something easy here. Since item 2514 is addition, I'm going to introduce Jack to do 2514.
I'm Jack Davis, RTM Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee from District 3. I move 2514E, resolved that the above appropriations totaling $184,153,900 for the purpose of meeting the expenses of the town of Darien for the fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2025, and ending June 30th, 2026, as shown by the budget this day approved. Do I have a second? I have Patty there. In the past, this was a real quick acclamation because we could add actually three numbers together. We added the Board of Selectmen budget, we added the Board of Education budget, and we added capital. That changed. What we now do is create two direct mill rates, which we then add together, because they're going to fund two accounts separately. So what we're going to be voting on is adding the Board of Selectmen budget and the Board of Education budget, because that total amount is going to be going to the general fund. The capital that we approved previously on B, that's going to have its own calculation for part of the mill rate, and that will go directly into the reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures. And so that's why we're here explaining this instead of just saying we can add. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee, yes, we did check the math. Thank you, Pierre. And voted unanimously in favor of the resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. And I now believe that Seth can say, let's do this by acclamation.
So, without objection, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? I hear none. Abstentions? Well, you can abstain if you'd like. Let Krista know. And so that sounded like that motion carried. So the next is approving the mill rate, and speaking on behalf of Finance and Budget again is Jack Davis.
It helps having my glasses. All right, I'm going to explain what we're going to be doing here first, and then we're going to do it, hopefully. I'm going to move the motion that existed because the RTM can only act on what we have been given by the Board of Finance. There was a timing difference that the final grand list calculation was not available at the time that the Board of Finance did their vote. It became available subsequently. So I'm going to move the initial motion and immediately, like we did in the last meeting, make an amendment. The new grand list reduces the mill rate that was voted on by the Board of Finance from $15.50 to $15.48. So I'll do that, providing the amendment passes. I can't imagine that we want the higher mill rate. We will then vote on the full resolution as amended, and then I'm going to explain how we got there and how the mill rate is calculated. So, I move Resolution 2514F. Do I have a second? I have Mark Adeletta. I would like to amend Resolution 2514F as follows. Whereas the Town of Darien Representative Town Meeting has been notified that the last complete grand list of the Town of Darien with the total net assessment value on property as of October 1st, 2024 was modified subsequent to the Board of Finance budget vote on April 8th, 2025, and whereas the last complete grand list of the Town of Darien is now a total net assessment value of $11,207,583,884 on the property as of October 1st, 2024, be it hereby resolved that the mill rate is 1548 mills to be levied upon the last complete grand list of the Town of Darien with the local total net assessment value of $11,207,583,884 on the property as of October 1st, 2024. Do I have a second? I'll take Michael again. Do you want to do this one by acclamation? We're killing my overrun.
I think we've got to vote this one and record the votes.
Okay, but we're going to do we're going to do it as amended subsequently.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Right. First thing we'll do is, all those in favor of the amendment, please rise. I think we got the 2/3.
Yeah, no joke.
Opposed? And abstentions. It appears that the motion to amend passed, so we'll move on. If it comes out differently, well, and we'll deal with that a little later, but I think to keep moving here, we'll go ahead and take up the motion as amended.
Okay. So I want you to know that nobody speed reads this better than John Zagroski, but we all try. I move 2514F as amended, resolved that the mill rate is 15.48 mills and is hereby levied upon the last complete grand list of the Town of Darien with the total net assessment value of $11,207,583,884 on the property as of October 1st, 2024, payable in 2 equal semi-annual installments, the first installment to become due and payable on July 1st, 2025, and the second installment to become due and payable on January 1st, 2026, provided, however, that 1, any taxpayer may pay both of said installment on July 1st, 2025. 2, the personal property tax on motor vehicles of said town shall become due and payable in 1 single installment on July 1st, 2025. 3, Any property tax in the amount not in excess of $100 shall become due and payable in one single installment on July 1st, 2025. Do I have a second? I have Pierre. I'm going to now give a report on how we got there, and then we'll go from there. So behind me is what the growth in the grand list is, and the various parts being residential, commercial, and all other real estate has grown by 0.75%. Motor vehicles grew by 2.28%, primarily due to the depreciation schedule that we voted on. There are some exemptions. The exemptions are basically, we're going to go through exemptions twice. There's certain exemptions for veterans, seniors, and other things like that. That's hitting the first part of this exemption sheet. That's there. Next slide. So we take that grand list total, and there's further adjustments. Yep. There's further adjustments by the state and other grants, typically for emergency workers, veterans, and some other things. That equals $35,777,195, and that brings us down to the grand list after adjustments. Now, in the past, we would look at our collection rate over the last 5 years and reduce the collection rate when we're calculating how much taxes we're going to get by 25 basis points. And we did that because there were changes during the course of the year based upon Board of Assessment Appeals issues and other changes, as well as incremental taxes that come in. So since this is all done October 1st, if you completed your kitchen in December, and that's when they told you what your new assessment value is, that wasn't in the original amount, but when we're taxed July 1st, that kitchen will be in your assessment, all right? So in the past, it was 25 basis points, but upon review, a couple of things happened this year. First, the actual collection rate of taxes went from 93.73% to 99.75%. So that was a 2 basis point increase, all right? In addition, based upon the fact that what we've been looking at, we've realized that we're collecting a lot more than we're doing, which is giving us significant excess funds at the end of the year, which is part of the reason we had the excess to pay down capital. So the Board of Finance decided instead of using 25 basis points, they would reduce that by 10 basis points, and so the reduction is now 15 basis points. We multiply that new number of what we're anticipating we're collecting, which is 99.6% of the grand list assessment value, to come up with an adjusted grand list for the calculation of the mill rate. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we do two types of calculations. The first one here is that we add the total Board of Selectmen budget and the education operating budget to come up with that number that we just proved we can add to. Now is when the non-tax revenues are reduced when we calculate what needs to be raised through taxes. So we can realize that we need certain money, but we also realize that there's non-tax revenue that are coming in. And the growth that you see this year of the incremental growth of 865 is based upon a couple of things. One is that the original calculation on the investment income was based upon a number of rate reductions. One of those rate reductions was taken away by the town treasurer, which added $300,000 to our incremental revenue. And another thing that the Board of Finance did, added another $500,000 to our investment income, which is the lion's share of that. We also have more from telecom, but there is other estimates that revenues may be going down in certain other places in town. But that takes away, which gives us the amount to be raised through taxes is $169,305,986, which we divide, basically. We calculate out the mill rate. There's an easy way to do it. You almost take away 1,000 and then multiply things out. That says the mill rate to be raised for the general fund is 15.22. We then look at the capital. At the capital we discussed, we approved a capital appropriation of $6,180,250. The reserve fund for capital non-recurring expenditures does make income on that fund, and that's $312,000. And we allocated $3 million from the general fund to pay down capital, which otherwise would have been raised from taxes. This is what's reducing that. So the mill rate on what we need to do from capital that's going to go into the capital account is 26 basis points. When you add the two of them together, which is the next slide, we come up with 1548. That's the mill rate. That's how it was calculated. That includes all the exemptions, all the different changes to it, and we go from there. So that explains the calculation. We're going to give a quiz on that later. And so the RTM Finance and Budget Committee reviewed the amended motion for 2514F as amended, and we voted unanimously for the new mill rate. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Just checking. Okay. I realize that's a little tough, but that's all right. All right. Any other committee want to try that? Okay. Town officials. Comments from the body. Electors of the town. Looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. 2514 as amended. As amended. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Item 2513 passed 83 in favor, 1 abstention. 2514A passed 81 in favor, 1 no, 2 abstentions. B passed 83 in favor, no no's, 1 abstention. C passed 82 in favor, no no's, 2 abstentions. And D passed 79 in favor, 3 no's and 2 abstentions. Opposed on the amended item and abstentions. Okay. Next is a routine matter that we do every year, which is authorized borrowing up to $5 million. Speaking on behalf of Finance and Budget, Jack Davis.
I'm trying to move this along. We started 15 minutes late, so I'm sort of calculating what my over-under is with when this meeting ends. I'm Jack Davis, District 3, Chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. I move Resolution 2514G. G, resolved that the Town of Darien, acting through its Board of Selectmen and subject to the approval of said town at the annual budget meeting of the representative town meeting to be held May 12, 2025, be authorized to borrow on the note or notes of the town in the sum of $5 million or so much thereof as may be necessary for the general expenses of the town pending the collection of either or both of said semi-annual installments of taxes on or prior to June 30th, 2026. Do I have a second? I have Louisa over there. This authorization is part of the annual budget resolution. It authorizes the town to issue short-term tax anticipation borrowings up to $5 million without the need of RTM approval subsequently. This allows the town to fund the budget in the event that there's a timing difference between tax collections and expenditures, while the town has never used this authority in the entire time I've been here, or even Seth's been here, which is much longer, or Tom Moore, who's been even longer than that. It gives them the necessary flexibility, once again, and the town does not need to issue tax anticipation notes. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee voted unanimously to approve this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you.
Okay, further comments, committee, town officials, from the body, electors of the town? I see none. Those in favor, please rise. Item 2514F passed 83 in favor, 1 abstention. We're doing 2514G for $5 million. Opposed, please? And abstentions. Okay. The next is other appropriations, 2514H. F&B is going to introduce this, and then Ralph Holman from Public Works is going to go through the sewer items and the parking lot items, and Adele Coniff will talk about the Recreation Program Fund, and then Mark Adeletta will talk to us about the Great Island Management Fund. But we're going to vote once on 2514H for all of these items. Okay, here we go.
Hello.
Jack Davis, F&B.
I'm still trying to make the over-under. I'm Jack Davis, District 3, RTM Finance and Budget Chair. I move 2514H, resolved that the following appropriations for other funds are hereby made as detailed below for the 2025-2026 fiscal year for the purpose of meeting expenses of the town of Darien as shown by the budget this day approved.
Time to go.
$4,688,907 for the sewer operating fund, $200,000 for the sewer assessment fund, $119,360 for the sewer
I heard you're
capital
still in the
fund,
auditorium, right?
$943,839 for the parking lot administration fund, $50,000 for the parking lot capital fund, $1,685,000 for the recreation program fund, $340,853 for the Great Island Management Fund. Do I have a second? I have Pierre. All expenditures and appropriations need to be approved. This resolution does such approvals for the funds listed above. Public Works, as was mentioned, will report on their funds. Mark out a letter, our RTM GIAC representative will report on the Great Island Management Fund. The RTM Finance and Budget voted unanimously to approve the appropriations for the funds mentioned and recommends the same to the full RTM. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jack. Rolf Oben for Public Works.
Thank you. Ralph Oben, District 4, Public Works Committee Chair. I'll try and get through this as quickly as I can here. The sewer operating budget. Appropriations in the sewer operations fund are used to maintain, repair, and operate 81 miles of sewer main and 14 pump stations. Revenue and expenses for sewer operations are proposed as $4,688,907, a modest increase of 1.9%. Water use is projected to reduce slightly from the previous year. There are no exceptional activities planned for the coming year as the Commission continues the multi-year town-wide inspection and I&I study, finishing Phase 2 and moving on to Phase 3. The Sewer Commission continues to develop a plan to rein in illicit sump pump connections to the sanitary system. More information is planned to come out later this year. Last year, an emergency repair was conducted at the Stamford water purification facility. Darienne's portion of the repair was $450,000. A 3-year payment schedule has been set for this extraordinary event. Come the end of July, the Commission will have full-year actuals of sewer affluent volume. Rates for the coming year will be subject to review in August, with a Commission vote soon thereafter. So the big number really is the charges for services. That is listed as $4,622,000 of the $4,688,000. And so that's really where all the money's going. That's for all the water that goes to the treatment facility in Stamford. The amount of water use I mentioned is slightly down. In the previous year, there was 480,000 CCF, which is 100 cubic feet of water, and now they're estimating 575,000. So there should be a slight paring off on rates, but there's still so much work to be done. So it'll be interesting to see how that all works out. The sewer capital budget. Sewer capital investment plan is proposed to increase $25,560 or 25.9%. The sewer department is planning the installation of new control equipment, gate valves, and backflow valves at multiple stations that would eliminate continued running of the pumps and provide a more energy efficient sanitary sewer system. Some generators will also be upgraded. Priorities are set from larger to smaller pump sizes. Other expenditures are consistent with previous years, i.e. ongoing capacity maintenance, operation and maintenance, or CMOM, chemical root control, and collection system rehabilitation. So that's it basically on public sewer system. I'd like to point out, though, that the sewer system is one of the largest assets that the town has. Although you don't see it, it's there, and everybody should be happy that it's operating in good condition. Okay, the parking fund operating budget. Both revenue and expenses of the 2025-26 parking operations fund are expected to rise modestly, $20,739 or 2.2%. The town has realized the 2025-2026 anticipated increase in revenue from the return of full enforcement staffing, and will continue to invest in technology to further modernize both payments and enforcement. So the overall budget is $943,839, and a lot of that goes into services, $832,000. With regards to the capital expenditures, there's really only one item listed. It's $50,000, and that is, I don't know if you're all familiar on Heights Road, on the southern side of Heights Road, where the parking is for the commuters. There's a sidewalk that goes along Heights Road there, and there's what I call the leaning wall of Heights Road. And so there's $50,000 in the budget to fix that wall and get it back in order, and that's basically the capital expenditure that's before us. The last thing is the sewer assessment. It's $200,000, and basically, I'll try and explain this as best as I can. I had some help from Jennifer and Jack. When a group in a part of town decides to put in sewer line to their area, of course, there's a lot of money involved because you have to dig up and lay the pipe, and that costs a lot of money. So that usually gets bonded, and of course, the town is the only authority that can bond. So in essence, we have to find a way, because the sewer commission then starts to receive assessment payments from those people for the new sewer that's just gone into their neighborhood. So we have to keep a balance between monies coming into that assessment fund and then monies that have already been laid up by the town for the bonding. And so periodically, we move money from the assessment fund back into the general fund to offset the bonding that had been done previously. And that's what this sewer assessment $200,000 fee is all about. It's about rebalancing between assessment fees that have been collected versus bonding that's already been spent for the new sewer line, okay? So the Public Works Committee met on May 1st and voted unanimously for both the sewer operating and capital expenditure budget, as well as the parking operating and capital budget, and the sewer assessment fee. Thank you.
Thank you, Rolf. For Park and Recreation Committee, Adele Coniff.
Adele Coniff, District 3, Parks and Recreation Committee Chair. 2514H, other appropriations, fiscal year 26 Recreation Program Fund. Revenue proposed $1,685,000. Oh, yes. You don't want to miss those numbers. Revenue proposed $1,685,000. Expenditures proposed $1,348,000. Contractual services, contractual services. Transfers $337,000. Total matches $1,685,000. This fund has been established to identify the actual revenue and expenses that result from the various programs and special activities run by the Parks and Recreation Department. Program registration revenue and instructor expenditures will be recorded in this fund. Program fees are designed to fully cover the cost of running each program. Revenue in excess of expenditures will be transferred to the general fund to offset salary and other overhead expenses that will continue to be charged to the general fund. The fiscal year 26 Recreation Programs Fund projected revenue budget has increased from $1,400,000 in fiscal year 25 to $1,685,000 in 26. The Parks and Recreation programs continue to successfully offer a wide variety of activities for adults and children. Classes range from soccer for 2- and 3-year-olds, Grit Ninja for 5 to 11-year-olds, fencing and woodworking, mad science, yoga, and ukulele lessons to traditional sports summer camps. Adults can enjoy workout classes, beach yoga, golf, volleyball, and tennis, pickleball, and guitar lessons. 2025 spring registration participants numbered 1,846, a 1.4% increase from 24. 2025 summer registration participants number 1,014, down 4.8% from 24, likely due to the school calendar. The department has added camps the week of school closing and expects participation numbers will likely end up similar to 2024. The Parks and Recreation Committee met on May 7th, 2025, with 13 of 14 members present, constituting a quorum, and voted unanimously in favor of the fiscal year 26 appropriation for the Recreation Program Fund and asked the RTM for their support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Adele. And speaking on our representative of the Great Island Fund, Mark Adeletta.
Thank you, Seth. I naively took the under this evening, Jack. But good evening. My name is Mark Adeletta, District 5 Rep, Public Works Committee representative, and as Seth just mentioned, your RTM representative to the Great Island Advisory Committee. At the request of the Rules Committee at its meeting May 31st, I was asked to report the Great Island Management Fund, which I will do right now. Recall, this fund was established in 2023. Like other special funds, this was created to track revenues and expenses related to the operation of Great Island. By way of background, this fund was projected to have a balance of $264,000 at the end of the current 2025 budget cycle. As you saw in the budget, the fund is expected to run a deficit of $341,000 for the current 2026 budget cycle. Here are the details. On the revenue side, you will note that the main driver, building rent, has steadily declined from a high of $504,000 back in 2024 to a budget in the current cycle of $175,000 and is proposed in the 2026 budget at zero. This reflects the steady decline in tenants from 7 or 8 tenants, including the stables, when the property was purchased, to the 1 or 2 tenants that remain. As discussed at the Board of Finance meetings, those existing leases expired June 30 of this year, and there is low expectation that the remaining leases continuing. Any other ancillary revenue has been minimal, as the GIAC continues to solicit input and work with Reed Hildebrand towards a master plan to provide a framework and governance around such activities going forward. With regard to operating expenses, key drivers are groundskeeping, facility repairs and maintenance, and utilities. Groundskeeping has been steady at around $150,000 to $160,000 a year, and this budget reflects the same. Much of this work is done by third parties under contract. I note the quality of this work has been evaluated regularly and supervised by the DPW and is viewed generally as favorable. You will notice facility repairs and maintenance have been sizable and are trending down $20,000 in the current budget. In the past, a good portion of this line item was related to upkeep of rental units. With most tenants now gone, the activity is reduced, giving rise to lower maintenance expectations. Similarly, with few tenants and units occupied, utility savings related to water, electricity, fuel oils, and supplies combined for a reduction of almost $30,000 in this budget. On this topic, the GIAC has been assured the facilities, while empty, are being maintained so as not to erode the current general condition while they're unoccupied. And finally, about $6,500 of reduction are from a new snow removal contract. That makes up $57,000 of a $59,000 reduction overall in GIAC operating expenses for 2026 budget cycle. At this point, the main takeaway is that with minimal rent and other revenue forecast results in the operating shortfall of almost $341,000 you see up on the screen. In previous years, any operating shortfall has been funded from one, the fund balance remaining from the prior year. I think Jack may have touched on how that works earlier in the evening. And two, as was the case in the current 2025 year budget cycle, with a $225,000 transfer from the general fund. That said, this 2026 budget cycle calls for a lesser $76,700 to be funded via a transfer from the general fund. That results from the projected balance I just mentioned of $264,000 being carried over from the current year and makes up the difference. That's the end of my comments related to the budget, but I do have 2 or 3 sentences here, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to share. Before I wrap up, thank you, sir. I want to take a moment to thank the members of this body who continue to participate in the ongoing work of the GIAC. Your input, your participation in the 3 previous public workshops and the input in the previous surveys is helpful. For those tracking the GIAC activities, please know we're in a very important phase right now, and I encourage you to continue to monitor. Most importantly, please participate in this weekend's workshop. It's the 4th and final workshop. It's dubbed the Planning and Design. It is, I won't say the culmination, but there is a lot of the plans and suggestions and evolution that's going to be presented there. It's very important that this body and our broader community participate. And with that, I thank you for your time this evening. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Very nice, Mark. So this vote is for all the items under 2514H. Are there any further committees that wish to speak? Okay, don't see any. Town officials? Members of the body, further comments? Electors of the town, I see none. It looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. Item 2514F passed 83 in favor, 1 abstention. And 2514G passed 81 in favor, 3 abstentions. Opposed, please? And abstentions. Final item tonight is 2515, appropriation $154,865,000 for refunding of certain of the town bonds. Please stay until we get the count in, and then we can adjourn. But for now, Jack Davis speaking on 25-15.
I am still Jack Davis. I'm still in District 3, and I'm still at least currently chair of the Finance and Budget Committee. This is the last budget resolution of the night. I move 2515 appropriating $154,865,000 to refund certain of the town's outstanding bonds and authorize the issuance of refunding bonds or amounts available in an unassigned fund balance to finance such appropriation. Do we have a second? I have Peter in the back. We do this resolution each year. The resolution authorizes the town to refund and authorizes the issuance of refunding bonds or amounts available in unassigned fund balance, the general fund, to refinance such appropriations. The authorization is for $154,865,000. Such refinancing is for the town's general obligation bonds, including but not limited to the town's general obligations bonds issued in 2016, 2017, 2019, 2020, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. Hence known as the prior bonds, together with the cost of issuance, including but not limited to any applicable consulting fees, legal fees, trustee and escrow agent fees, investment fees, verification fees, underwriting fees, and the other financing and transactional costs of the other expenses related to the payments and redemption of such bonds for the purposes of refunding them. Upon approving this resolution, any authorized but unissued portions of previous refunding authorizations from last year are rescinded. By the way, keep on reading to your grandkids. It's easy to read this. With the RTM vote addressing this resolution, our fiscal 2025-2026 budget resolutions are completed. The RTM Finance and Budget Committee unanimously approved this resolution and recommends the same to the full RTM. And we wish to thank you for your time and participation in this year's budget and the completion of another successful RTM budget season. Thank you.
Congratulations to you all for surviving. No, I don't mean that. If you're all still here, yes, it's very good. Comments from any other committees? Okay. Elected officials, members of the body, and electors of the town. It looks like we're ready to vote. All those in favor, please rise. He did already. Okay, opposed, please? Abstentions? Please wait until I get the count here on the last item. Okay. 2514H passed, 81 in favor, no noes, 2 abstentions. Item 2515 passed, 81 in favor, 3 abstentions, no noes. I'll accept a motion to adjourn. So moved. All in favor, please aye. Nice job.